This Notebook LM video explores the Ecclesiastical Hierarchy. It presents the Church's structure as a mirror of heaven, a sacred ladder connecting humanity to God through angels and clergy. The hierarchy is described not as a rigid flowchart but as a living process of purification, illumination, and perfection, guiding the soul toward deification.
All right, welcome. Today we're diving into something pretty amazing, a single, mysterious text that popped up in the 6th century and basically wrote the rulebook, the spiritual and administrative blueprint for the Christian church for more than 1,000 years. And, it all starts with a really profound question. What if the way we worship here on earth, all the roles, the rituals, the entire structure, wasn't just something people made up, but was actually a perfect reflection of the divine order up in heaven? What if there was a real, tangible ladder connecting us directly to God?
Well, back in the early 500s, this work called the Ecclesiastical Hierarchy shows up, and it claims to do exactly that. It was presented as an eyewitness account straight from the age of the apostles, revealing the sacred structure that links the church on earth to the angels in heaven, and then all the way up to God. And for centuries, people took it as gospel.
To really get why this was so powerful, we have to understand its central idea, its core metaphor, this ladder between heaven and earth. And at the heart of that ladder is a concept the author called hierarchy. But listen, this wasn't hierarchy like we think of it today, like a corporate flowchart. It was something way, way deeper. For this author, hierarchy was a sacred, living, dynamic process. It was this beautifully ordered pathway with one single ultimate goal, deification. Now that's a big word, but it stands for an incredible idea, the journey of the human soul becoming more and more like God until it's finally united with God. So you see, it was never about power. It was all about spiritual transformation. So, how does it all work? Well, the author imagined this incredible cascade of divine light and wisdom. It flows from the very top, from God, down through all the different ranks of angels. Then it's received and passed on by the church's clergy here on earth, who then share it with the people. Each level has a job: to purify, to illuminate, and to perfect the one right below it. Honestly, the best way to wrap our heads around this is to walk the path ourselves. So, for the rest of this explainer, I want you to imagine you're a catechumen. That's an uninitiated seeker back in the 6th century. You've made the choice to leave your old life behind and start climbing this sacred ladder. Okay, so your journey starts right at the bottom, at the most basic, foundational level, purification. Before you can receive any kind of divine light, you first have to be cleansed of everything that came before. And here, you meet your guide, the deacon. The author actually calls them the liturgos, which means a public servant of the sacred rites. They are the purifying order of the clergy. Their whole job is to get you, the seeker, ready to be cleansed so you can even approach the holy mysteries. Now, this isn't just some mental exercise. It involves these really powerful, physical, symbolic acts. You're literally stripped of your old clothes, which represent your old life. You're physically turned to face the west, the direction of darkness, to renounce Satan, and you do it 3 times. Then you're turned around to face the east, where the sun rises, to declare your new faith in Christ, the light. It's a total 180-degree reorientation of your entire being. Okay, so you've been purified, you've turned your back on the darkness. Now you're ready to take the next huge step up that ladder, illumination. This is the sacrament of baptism, but the text calls it the mystery of illumination. This is your real birth into the church, and it's performed by the next rank up in the clergy, the priests. They are the illuminators. Their whole job is to transmit those first rays of divine light to you. And the ceremony itself is just packed with symbolism. First, you're anointed with holy oil to get you ready for the holy contests of the spiritual life. Then comes the 3 immersions in water. After that, you're dressed in a pure white garment, a symbol of your new luminous self. You're sealed with a special consecrated perfumed oil called miron or chrism. And finally, you are welcome to receive the Eucharist for the very first time. The author is really clear about what this all means. He explains that being completely submerged in water isn't just about getting washed. It's meant to be a profound image of dying to your old self, of entering an invisible tomb, just like Christ was in the tomb for 3 days. So, you've been purified, you've been illuminated.
Now you're approaching the very top of the earthly ladder, the final stage of your initiation into these mysteries, perfection. This is the territory of the hierarch, who we would call the bishop. As the highest rank, the hierarch's role is totally unique. They don't just purify or illuminate, they are the ones who possess the fullness of sacred knowledge, and they have the power to bring others to a state of perfection. And this perfection is passed on through very specific, exclusive powers. Only the hierarch can create other clergy by ordaining priests and deacons. Only they can consecrate that holy oil, the immersion, that's used in baptism. Only they can consecrate the altar itself. They are the gatekeepers of the deepest knowledge, the ones who make the entire system complete. And this just brings the whole idea home, doesn't it? The hierarch's position on earth, surrounding the altar, holding the deepest knowledge, is a direct, perfect mirror of the highest order of angels, the seraphim, who surround God's throne in heaven, just endlessly contemplating the divine. The ladder is now complete. So we've got this perfect, beautiful system, a ladder from earth straight to heaven. But why? Why did this particular vision become so incredibly powerful, so foundational for the entire medieval church? Well, the answer lies in a really fascinating case of mistaken identity. Okay, so here's the kicker. The author wrote under a pseudonym, Dionysius the Areopagite. Now, that name is actually in the Bible. He was a guy converted directly by the Apostle Paul in Athens. So you can imagine, this gave the text this immense, almost untouchable authority. For centuries, people thought it was a first-hand report from the apostolic age. But it wasn't. Modern scholars have confirmed the author was actually an anonymous Syrian mystic from the late 5th century, who was deeply influenced by Greek Neoplatonic philosophy, which, by the way, is where that whole idea of a great chain of being flowing down from God really comes from. And you can see the impact right here on this timeline. For almost 1,000 years, this work was the unquestioned authority on how a church should be structured, on rituals, on mystical theology. By the time Renaissance scholars like Erasmus started to question who really wrote it, it was too late. The ideas had already formed the very bones of both the Western and Eastern churches. The ladder had been built, and for centuries, everybody was climbing it. So the big takeaway here is this. One anonymous author's brilliant combination of Christian theology and Greek philosophy, which was then given legitimacy by a false identity, created this incredibly powerful and lasting vision. It was a vision of a perfectly ordered universe where every single ritual, every prayer, every person had a very specific place on a ladder that led directly to God. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This ancient text gave people a clear, structured, hierarchical path for the soul's journey to God. Now, in our world, which is much more fragmented and individualistic, that kind of certainty can seem pretty alien. But that fundamental desire for connection, that hasn't gone away. So the question is, if we're not using this ladder anymore, what ladders are we building today?